Hi everyone, welcome to my stories. No voiceovers, no dialogues, just moments, and the silence between them. Today, a gift no one asked for, a truth no one was ready to hear, and a goodbye no one said out loud. If this story lingers in you, like silence after the storm, like, share, and subscribe. The next moment may already be unraveling. Morning sunlight stretched across the closed gate. The garden still shimmered with dew. Tu Tieu wasn't home. The door was locked. Everything was still as if the house itself was holding a secret. Uri arrived without warning. He stood in front of the gate, hesitant. In his hand, a small bag, something he had brought before, yet never managed to give at the right moment. He stepped quietly into the garden. Each row of flowers, each potted plant seemed to breathe with silence. He paused in front of a bougainvillea just beginning to bloom. Carefully, he brought it inside, placing it on the tea table, a small gesture, but perhaps the only way he could exist in Tu Tieu's carefully guarded world. His eyes wandered across the room. A small detail caught his attention, a photo frame lying face down on the bookshelf. He reached for it and gently turned it up. Inside was a childhood photo of Tu Tieu, standing beside a woman he didn't recognize. Her expression was distant, almost unreadable. Her eyes looked somewhere far beyond the frame. Uri picked up his phone and called. Tu Tieu's voice came through calm and direct. "I'm visiting the old fisherman." Uri froze. It wasn't work, it wasn't business. It was a place without a name, without schedule, a place he wasn't part of. He hung up, left the house. As he stepped away, something in him quieted. A gust of wind passed through the garden. Perhaps some doors require more than a key. They demand time and a kind of knowing. The narrow dirt path curved down to the river's edge. The sun had risen, but the air still held the damp, earthy scent of fresh mud. Uri arrived at a place Tu Tieu once mentioned but never brought him to. A weathered wooden house stood beneath tall trees, its roof patched with moss. An old man sat in the shade, bony hands unraveling a worn fishing net. Tu Tieu turned at the sound of approaching footsteps. Her eyes met Uri's with a brief flicker of surprise. Not because he came, but because the distance between them had never truly closed. "You came," her eyes said. No words, just a quiet nod. The silence among the three was gentle but heavy. Uri sat beside them, watching the old man spread medicinal leaves to dry. Tu Tieu rolled up her sleeves and began scrubbing the wooden floor. Uri followed, almost instinctively. They worked side by side, no words, only the rhythmic sounds of water and wood under calloused hands. For the first time, Uri saw her in a world that wasn't his. A world where her hands weren't soft, but rough with habit. Where her eyes didn't search for anyone, but stayed rooted in simple tasks that held meaning only she understood. At one moment, their hands touched while lifting a fishing net. She froze, didn't pull away, didn't hold on, just still, like them. Still, uncertain, unresolved. Uri realized this wasn't just the old man's house. It was a quiet chapter of her life she never opened to anyone. A world that had shaped her, and one he had never dared to enter until now. The wooden boat sliced gently through the river's still surface. Wind swept through reeds along the bank, stirring memories not yet faded. The old man rowed in silence, his face carved by years under the sun, his eyes fixed ahead to the spot where nets had been dropped days before. Uri sat opposite, hands gripping the boat's edge. Tu Tieu was beside him, the life vest clinging to her slender frame, her hair brushing his face each time the wind shifted. No one spoke. The first net rose heavy from the depths. Uri's muscles strained as he helped the old man pull. His grip slipped, water splashing against his cheek. Tu Tieu held the other side steady. Her eyes glanced at him, not scolding, not pitying, simply still. And that quiet gaze made Uri feel something unfamiliar displaced. Here, he wasn't leading. He wasn't deciding. He was simply trying to understand. They continued pulling, sorting fish and shrimp. Uri's hand scraped against the boat's edge, drawing blood. Tu Tieu reached into her pocket, handed him a folded piece of gauze. No words, no comfort. Uri took it, nodded. In that tiny, unsaid moment, something shifted. The old man spoke, slowly, of flood seasons, of how the river once saved his family in a storm. His voice didn't tremble with sorrow. Yet, when he looked up, eyes wet, someone looked away. Here on the river, with nothing but sky, water, and silence, the weight of what wasn't said pressed heavier than words. And Uri, for the first time, wondered if he had ever truly known who Tu Tieu was, or who he was beside her. The boat glided gently into the dock. The water still rippled softly, catching the last streaks of sunlight falling through the trees. Tu Tieu stepped out first, tying the rope and pulling the boat close. Uri followed, a beat slower, his hand still bandaged white gauze now damp and wrinkled. They sat on the wooden bench outside the old man's house. No words, just stillness. A silence that wasn't empty, just full of things unspoken. The old man brought out a bag of fish, another of shrimp. "Take these home," he said simply, like he was offering nothing at all. Uri hesitated. The fish were fresh, still twitching. And yet, something about this gift unsettled him. "We'll pay," Tu Tieu said gently. The old man shook his head. Uri reached for his wallet, fingers trembling slightly. "We can't just take them." Still, the old man refused. "These belong to the river, not to me." And in that moment, Uri felt small. Tu Tieu said nothing. Some gifts, he realized, have no price. Some kindnesses cannot be returned with money. What disturbed him wasn't the gift, but the helplessness of having nothing to offer back. It was unfamiliar, this powerlessness, for a man used to giving, not receiving. On the walk home, the bag of fish and shrimp sat between them. Yet Uri felt the distance stretching. Some people don't know how to accept, especially when kindness comes from a place they cannot control or understand. The small kitchen flickered with firelight. The scent of lemongrass, ginger, and dried shallots rose from the simmering clay pot. Tu Tieu stood over it, gently stirring, eyes distant as if watching something that didn't belong to this room. Uri entered, his hands still carrying the smell of river water, carefully cleaning the last muddy fish. They didn't speak. "Maybe we should invite Egan to dinner?" Tu Tieu's voice came soft. barely a suggestion. Uri paused. He didn't say no, didn't say yes, but his gaze dimmed slightly. Tu Tieu made the call. When she handed him the phone, he nodded politely, nothing more. The meal took shape in quiet diligence. The braised fish rested perfectly on her plate. The skewered shrimp lined up over glowing embers. Uri lit the fire, washed the herbs, trimmed the lemongrass. His hands, usually poised to sign contracts, now soaked in smoke and something harder to name. Between footsteps that avoided creaks and glances that didn't linger, Uri began to understand. He might have stepped deep into Tu Tieu's world and still be lost. The meal was nearly done. The fragrance filled the small kitchen. But no one felt hunger, because the things that needed to be said only grew heavier in silence. And sometimes, a shared dinner becomes a quiet revelation. Closeness does not always mean understanding. Familiar hands might still fumble in the dark, when hearts refuse to meet in the middle. The sound of a car approached from a distance. Tu Tieu lifted her head. Uri followed her gaze. Egan had arrived. He stepped in with familiar ease, a soft smile on his lips, but something shifted in the room. Tension, subtle, sharp, stretched between the three of them like a string pulled too tight. Dinner began. The clinking of bowls, the bubbling of braised fish, small sounds working hard to cover what no one wanted to say. Tu Tieu offered Egan the grilled shrimp. Uri stayed silent, his eyes drifting from Egan to his untouched plate. Then Egan asked, "Where's your mother?" Everything stilled. Tu Tieu lowered her eyes. Her voice came slowly. "Aunt Lan isn't my real mother." The words fell like shattered glass onto the dinner table. Uri looked up, his expression shifting. Egan said nothing. Chopsticks paused mid-air. No one reached for food again. The truth unfolded like a wound. Aunt Lan hadn't come for love, but because someone sent her. The documents possibly forged. The person who brought her already reported to the police. Tu Tieu didn't blame anyone, but her voice trembled as she thanked them for trying to help her find her family. Under the table, Uri's hands clenched. He hadn't realized that what he thought was protection might have hurt her more. And Egan, still silent, eyes flickering, seemed to know something neither of them had the courage to say aloud. The meal sat unfinished, and between the three of them, something irreparable had already begun to shift. The afternoon slowed in the backyard. Tu Tieu rinsed the leaves under a stream of water, her touch gentle, her gaze distant. Uri stepped forward and placed a folded bundle of money in her palm. "Repaying what I owe." She looked at him, not angry, not surprised. Just a quiet sadness that flickered and faded too quickly to hold. "I don't need it. I know, but I do." His reply wasn't for her. It was for himself. He once believed that doing the right thing could fix everything. But some cracks weren't caused by mistakes, they were shaped by the silence between mismatched paths. Egan stepped out with a bag in hand. His smile was easy, belonging. Uri watched them, two people standing side by side. Not close, but aligned. He didn't interrupt. He didn't explain. He simply turned to leave. Tu Tieu called after him. "Do you want to stay for dinner?" He didn't stop. Her words floated behind him. soft as wind never quite reaching. The wooden door closed behind Yuri. No tears, no blame, just the quiet of two people who once tried, who once reached but now stood on separate shores. Somewhere, the river still flowed, but not every boat finds its way back to the same harbor.